Hello humans. Today I got this guy right here in the mail. I'm fairly sure I know what this is, but we're gonna find out. It says House of Knives on it. I'm pretty sure this is a Christmas present for my sister. This is being filmed like a week after Christmas, but Canada Post decided to have an internal fight and it turned into a mess, so everything got late. Point being, this says House of Knives on it. Let's see what we got. Great, now I gotta blur that. Blah, 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 blah. House of Knives. Item. Order 1. Kansept. Oh. Ooh. Okay, I know what this is. This is from my sister. Thank you very much. Other than that, we have just a little bit of paper for padding and a cardboard box. Here we have our... Wow, that's... It's definitely weighty. We have our Kansept box. Our Kansept box in a bag. Is it going to open like a phone case? It is going to open like a phone case. Or not case. Like a phone box kind of a deal. Wait, is this a full... Okay, it's not a full sleeve. This is a different box. I have never actually owned a Kansept before. I've played with a couple, but I've never actually owned my own, so this will be a first for me. Somebody's inevitably getting complained that I'm taking too long to get to the knife itself, and... Ha! Here we have our microfiber cloth, Kansept branded. And then... Okay, that is one of, if not the least pleasant feeling paper products I've ever interacted with. This is our warranty, Kansept exemptions due to manufacturing defects. Yeah, that makes sense. Damage caused by abuse, neglect, accident, or improper blade sharpening will not be covered. Repairs to your knife by anything other than Kansept will void your knife's warranty. Any disassembly or modification will void the warranty. Let people take apart their fucking knives, guys. Come on. Bunch of other crap. Okay. This is unpleasant to interact with. It's... Ooh, snacks. Yum, yum, yum. Alright. The box is kind of different. I do dig the box. It's a Corvid XL. Blue coating, 154 cm. Fanciness. Alright. Let's get to the knife itself. First thing first, this is actually a nice bag. It's like a, it's a proper cloth bag, like a thick weave cloth. I dig this. This is probably my favorite knife pouch so far. This is the Desert Warrior version of the Kaiser, or not Kaiser, the Kansept Corvid XL. Oh my freaking god, this thing is huge. This is definitely from my sister, so thank you again, sister dearest. Oh my freaking god. So it's like a painted G10. We've got colored painted screws. Those are big looking too. Are these... Normally this is not something that I do right now, but I just want to take a quick look. Okay, they are only T8, they just look really big. Pivot also a T8. Pivot's bigger than a T8. Might be a full T10. The pivot is a T10, so that's kind of cool. Obviously, don't take apart your knife. It voids your fucking warranty. So stupid. Anyways. Oh man, this is a very spoon-like pocket clip. Those are going to be T6 on the pocket clip. And then we have like gold-coated liners, color-matching back spacers. And a big old cleaver blade. So I've never owned a Kansept, but I have played with a couple. One of the models I have played with is the Corvid medium, which is a much, much smaller knife. Oh my god, that's heavy. Kosh Tools Company. It's actually kind of a neat logo. Big blue painted. It's got a lot of oil on it for shipping. It's pretty cool. This thing, initial impressions of the flip, this thing flips like a bull. By which I mean it just kind of lumbers forward. Like it's not running, it's not sprinting, but it's gonna get there. It's definitely not fast. This is freaking big in the hand. It's not very thick, but it's very tall, which is making it feel much more hand-filling. You've got these nice, big, traction-getting jimps. No edge on the top, like nothing at all. Full-length fuller, and it's a liner lock. I like liner locks. Liner locks are actually my preferred locking method when it comes to like between liners and frames. I know a lot of people like frame locks more and they're considered more premium, but I actually do prefer a liner lock personally. Thumb studs work quite well. That technically worked, but not really. Really what I'm doing is I'm just like giving it the slightest amount of tension and then flicking my wrist. Like this is such a big, heavy freaking blade. Wow, okay. Blue paint, this is gonna be a paint. I don't think it's a Cerakote or anything like that. Impressively polished edge. Yeah. Yeah, that doesn't really surprise me, to be honest. I mean, it is sharp. It has a lot of space to get down to the final cut. Like, this is very, very thin behind the edge. I imagine it's going to be a flat ground blade. I don't have it square right now. Yeah, it's just a big, tall, flat ground blade. So it has lots and lots of space to get down to that final cutting thickness, which means it's going to be very thin behind the edge. You've got an extremely generous choil. Like I can put my full thumb knuckle in there. So extremely generous choil. I normally do a puncture test and a rubber cutting test. Rubber cutting test I think is going to go well. This puncture test is not though. But let's see. Here's why the puncture test is not going to go well. You can see the angle that that's at just in order to like get, yeah, you can see it's not stabbing in, it's just kind of compressing, like it's trying to do a cut instead of a stab. In a pure cut, this is going to do well. Any type of like puncturing task, it is very much not designed for. I mean, I imagine you could still get into like a cardboard box or something like that with it, like poke and then slice. Yeah, so you can do that, it's just very much not necessarily designed for it. Alright. The rubber slab has gotten bigger and heavier. Let's see how well this does. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's oh, shoot. That's actually really impressive. I don't want to do too many cuts because it's going to be really hard on this finish on the blade. Maybe not. Maybe this is a more durable finish than I think it is. Might be more than just paint. I don't know for sure. Do I do another one? I kind of expected to feel a little bit of added drag with the fuller cutout there, but I actually didn't notice any. Let's try that again. Yeah, so getting the cut going takes a bit, but then once the cut is going, it is an absolute dream. Yeah, I mean, definitely cutting through this with no issue. Yeah, it's very, very slicey. I'm not experiencing any additional drag on where that fuller is. Yeah, whatever the finish is does seem to be taking on a little bit of scratches, but not much. This thing's freaking huge. This guy... I need like something wide to compare this to, because this is genuinely wider than my smartphone. What do I have here even? Like a decent comparison. Well, just for comparison's sake, I guess I've got a buck 110. That you could like, there's comfortably 2 buck 10s worth just in width. Right there, that's insanity. Oh man, this is gonna be fun. You've got flipper tab, thumb studs. It does go out very securely. Got a little bit of milling throughout the center of the handle. It's not difficult to manipulate whatsoever. I can't quite tell if it's riding on bearings or it's got an internal stop pin. I can't quite tell if it's riding on bearings or if it's riding on washers. It feels kind of like bearings, but maybe the bearings just need like a little bit of oil. I can't see in there to tell, but it could be washers. I'm hoping it's washers. If it's washer action, it feels pretty good. If it's lockup's completely solid. If it's bearing, it feels a little bit grimy. God, that's fun. This is going to be a fun one to carry around. I haven't actually played with the Kansept, like I said. Definitely some of the stuff that interests me the most out of Kansept's line is like the extreme fun stuff. And this is one of the extreme fun stuff, so I'm excited to play with this. It's freaking huge in my hands. I'll be back, I guess, with more fully formed thoughts now. And we are back. So I've been playing with this guy for... Oops. I over-tightened that. I just put it back together because I was looking for something on the inside, and I appear to have not bothered to check the pivot after doing so. Is it even centered? Oh, it is centered at least. So we just back this off ever so slightly. Still centered. A little bit more. Still centered. There we are. All right. Should probably have checked the action before I started recording it again, but that's okay. I just put it back together. So yeah, I've been playing with this guy for a couple of weeks now, and I have to say, overall, this was very different from anything I've carried before. I did enjoy it. Yeah, overall I did enjoy it, but it was very different. So the first thing is when it says XL, it is XL, but it's scaled up dimensions, not scaled lengthwise directions. I am somebody who has no problem typically carrying longer knives. I'll carry knives 4+ inches, 4.5+ inches, sometimes even in the 5-inch range without any issue. However, this thing right here, just because of how freaking wide it is, posed a different type of issue for me, where like the pocket clip is like almost in the middle of my pocket, right? So if I moved it over to the side like I would with a traditional knife, this actually ends up hooking on the corner of on the seam of my pocket, which does make kind of an impromptu pocket deployer. But the reason why pocket deployers are close to the pivot is because if it's close to the pivot, it doesn't need to be in your pocket as it opens. If this right here hooks, the entire knife needs to be opened sideways in your pocket, which is just super duper awkward. So Very different carrying experience from anything I have experienced before. I can confirm it does use bearings, multi-row bearings. The reason I was having difficulty in the first part of this with the action and why it felt so rough and kind of problematic to me is because the bearings needed to wear off the paint on the blade. It is paint. It's not any kind of like fancy super whatever. It is just paint. It lasted pretty okay on the blade. You can see, especially on the pocket clip, it actually got worn away quite a bit. And that's literally from just rubbing up against the back of my apron at work. We have to wear leather aprons because welding, fire, don't want to set ourselves on fire, yada yada. So that's just like the leather from the apron and maybe brushing up against my bench every so often. And it did a decent amount to just the paint there. But the blade itself looks fine. It didn't get like tons of heavy use, but it carved wood and stuff like that, and it did. The paint in particular held up quite decently on the blade itself, which is impressive. The print quality on the actual the G10 of the handles, I do think is higher than the blue of the blade, and this gold kind of pastry colored liner it's an anodization of some type, I'm pretty sure, and it holds up beautifully. The only place in the United States where this is available to purchase, according to the Kansept website, is Blade HQ. It's available to purchase outside of the US through their website. I got mine from my sister, who got it from House of Knives Canada. So it is absolutely not the worst thing in the world to find. This is a showpiece, and I need to talk about it in two separate ideas. The first off is the aesthetic, and the second off is the design of the model itself. Aesthetically, my only complaint is the coloring that they used. If they used something just a little bit more durable, it would be perfect. The G10's really good. The liners are really good. I don't even necessarily mind the paint on the screws because you're not really supposed to play with the screws too much, just for like disassembly and cleaning. But the blade and the pocket clip should have had something a little bit tougher than paint, whether that be like a hard coat or Cerakote or something like that. I think would have been hugely beneficial to it. Into the design itself, because aesthetically you know if you like it or not. It's fairly comfortable for such a large blade, but it doesn't have quite have the size or the robustness to it to be good for like a heavy chopper, which is what you typically think of when you see this profile. But there's not as... The blade is heavy, don't get me wrong, but for a blade of its side-on profile, it's really quite light because of that really tall flat grind, which meant that chopping this thing didn't do a brilliant job. There just wasn't enough mass behind the blade, but in a slice, this was amazing. Like food prep, vegetables, all of that stuff, it just absolutely phenomenal right through it with no issues at all. Super amazing for any type of like long slicey task. I imagine if you did cut lots of cardboard, stuff like that, this would be amazing for that as well. I don't do tons of cardboard, but I did an amount of it, and it did handle it quite well. 154 cm is a decent, fairly good blade steel at the price point. Take from that what you will. But yeah, it's freaking slicey. The jimping up here is good for traction, but mostly just because I'm like kind of just digging whatever point of my thumb I'm pushing against the blade with in between two of the grooves, which is what's reducing it. Not so much like the entirety of my thumb is in contact with multiple grooves that are helping to increase traction. It's just pick one, dip whatever part of your thumb you're going to be pushing with in there, and your thumb's not moving because it's in a really nice divot. The liner lock is very nicely cut out and scalloped, which actually makes it really comfortable and easy to disengage with no difficulties whatsoever. In terms of like manipulation, this knife is quite nice. My biggest complaint with manipulation with this thing is it's kind of hard to get to the thumb stud without having your index finger in the way of the flipper tab. Like you can see, I'm hitting my own finger, which is just losing me speed. Whereas if I hold down a little bit lower, it can be a bit of a reach, and a lot of it just has to do with how wide the knife profile is, because this is a very wide blade, like I said. It is fairly comfortable. It's very hand-filling, but you do get a comfortable grip. In terms of like wood carving and stuff like that, it wasn't great. It's not very dexterous. It's very much oriented towards those like long slicing tasks, but for like a folding chef's knife or any type of like long straight cuts, this thing's a freaking laser beam, which is just super, super cool. Action did smooth out, like I said. Oops. Did smooth out on the bearings just because the bearings wore a track through the paint. That area probably should not have been painted where the bearings are actually riding on, but they wore a track through the paint and then became quite comfortable, which has helped out the action pretty significantly, to be honest. Let's do some size comparisons real quick. Here it is next to the Civivi Chevalier and the Wee Banter. As you can see, it is quite a bit bigger than either, and especially in the handle, like you can see the handle height is really quite tall. It's actually even more accentuated up against the Civivi Chevalier. Like it's almost half again as tall in the handle. It's not much bigger in the blade. The handle is longer. But yeah, so this is definitely large dimensionally. Here it is next to the Buck 110. As you can see, it is ever so slightly smaller than the Buck 110, which means for me, I consider this to be a medium-sized knife. This is freaking big for a medium-sized knife. Just to be clear, this is very large for a medium-sized knife. And here it is next to a Zippo. In terms of thickness, I don't think it's going to be very thick. Most of the hand fillingness, I feel like, comes from the height right here. But let's find out. Really? It's like, wow, really? It's basically the same thickness as the Buck 110, which is, damn, I didn't expect that. Just for reference, here's the thickness up against the Civivi Chevalier, and as you can see, it's like a good deal thicker. Next to the Zippo. Yes, it's like a full scale thickness thicker than the Zippo. That's wider than I expected, to be honest. Like it feels much slimmer in that particular dimension, but that's probably because the rest of the dimensions are so severely oversized. Yeah, blade stock thickness. The other thing I will say from like a design perspective that I'm not huge on, this pocket clip's a freaking spoon. It's not uncomfortable. At least I don't really find it uncomfortable. It fits in that gap in my hand where I'm not super touching the blade or the handle anyways. And it is fairly low. Like it looks, you can see it scoops up there, which is kind of annoying. And it is wide, but it's not super tall and proud or pokey. So it does fit fairly comfortably, but it is a spoon, absolutely. Yeah, so it's about 140 thousandths. Which is, I'm doing math in my head. Why am I doing math in my head? 140 thousandths, which is fairly thick, but it has so much height to get to that edge. Playing with stuff in the background, shouldn't be getting distracted. It has so much height to get to that final thickness. It's really not bad, and like it feels incredibly slicey in a cut. As soon as you have it in a cut, it is happy to continue cutting. It's really and truly just getting around, especially if you make lots of cuts in more narrow spaces, or if you're used to needing like a lot of precision. This can be difficult to get to that precision, that level of precision out of. It's also fully belly. There's no flat section here, which again, super useful in a slice, not as useful in the type of like high precision stuff I tend to ask of my knives. But it's just so much fun, and it's big and chunky and authoritative feeling. So as far as like the design of it, it's really, really nice. I never really got the fuller deployment to work super well, but it is nice for a slow roll. Yeah, in terms of specifically the donut, the Dessert Warrior version of it, you knew immediately if that was for you or not. 100%, no questions. You knew if that was going to be for you or not. However, in terms of the design overall in this size format, I actually think it's really nice if you do a lot of slicing tasks. Anything other than a lot of slicing tasks, mileage may vary, but slicing tasks specifically, it did a very, very good job. I also think that they're running the 154 CM a little bit harder. I don't know this for sure. A little bit harder than I might be used to, or it's just because it is so thin at the final edge and stuff like that. I found it to be a little bit chippy in chopping. Not super, like, you can see the chips are extremely, can you even pick up the chips? The chipping is extremely small, but it's more than I would have expected from 154 CM given what I was asking it to do. But it held its edge so excellently for 154 CM. I'm assuming what it is they're just running it a little bit harder. I don't know that for sure though. Anyway, I am actually gonna go clean those out of this. In terms of recommendations, like I said, if you're doing a lot of long slicing cuts, absolutely. If you're doing anything else, proceed with a little bit more caution. This is probably only going to get carried when I'm doing like fun themed outfits or cosplays for it, because there's a lot of fun cosplays that I think suit a knife like this. The one that's popping to mind immediately is Willy Wonka, to be honest. I think that this is something Willy Wonka would carry. Yeah, stay safe and have fun out there. Peace.